proceed in order. Please rise for the silent reflection and pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call again.
Mrs. Cynthia? Mrs. King?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien? Here. Mr. Schuler? Here. Mr. Tinkin?
Here.
Mr. Borlaug? Mayor Mechanico?
Here. Please read the Open Public Meetings Act.
Pursuant to the requirements of New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this special meeting has been provided via 48-hour notice, which was transmitted to the Asbury Park Press and the Co-Star newspaper. The purpose of this special meeting will include a recreation working group presentation and discussion concerning use and potential improvements to recreation facilities, including Lair Road Park and the adjacent Fletcher property. Formal action may also be taken on the appointment of seasonal employees.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Just a few ground rules I'd like to go over before we begin. This is a meeting for the Recreation Working Group, and I believe everybody has a copy of them. Can we pass these out?
They were available.
At the table. The way we will proceed is Councilman Tinkin would make his presentation. Then the council will have the opportunity after Councilman Tinkin is done to comment or question Mr. Kempkins or myself. And after the council's pretty much talked themselves out, then the public may speak, okay, about what they heard tonight, or against, or something else. The only thing I will have as far as any rules go, I'm not sure how many people will speak, so we'll keep it to 5 minutes per person to begin. If you can't get it all in within the first 5 minutes, wait for everybody to at least have one go around. And if you still have something else you'd like to say, come back for the second. All right, and we'll see how that works out. I'd just like to make one comment, a few comments, I'm sorry, about Councilman Timken. When he held these meetings, we had two. He ran a very well-organized meeting. It was very civil and cordial, and it was very productive. So I would like to see the same here tonight as well. There'll be no, when the public speaks, if you have a question, direct all your comments and questions to the chair, which I'm the chair. If you have a direct question to any councilman, direct it to me, and then I will give the councilperson the authority to comment on that question. Okay? Other than that, say what you have to say to the chair. Don't try not to talk among each other, because then you won't get much accomplished. All right? So just keep everything directed to the chair. If you have a question for a particular person up here, direct it to me, and then they will speak. And I think it will go well. Okay, Councilman Timken.
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor, and welcome everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. Jay, you have one more?
Just want to note that there are seats available in the front for those that are standing.
We'll be staying up here, so it's safe. Come closer. Okay, so thanks everybody. As the mayor said, the mayor and I formed a working group about 2-3 months ago to discuss this idea of all the parks in the town. We have several parks and open spaces, and try to come to some agreement on a strategic plan moving forward on how the best way to use those parks, upgrade them, maintain them. Because as you know, as you drive around town, some parks are in better shape than others, and some parks can certainly use a facelift overall. And so that's some of the things that we set out to do. This meeting specifically deals with perhaps the largest park that needs a facelift in town, and that's Lair Road Park. So that's what we'll be discussing tonight. But I did want you to know that we talked about all the open spaces in the town and ways to improve all the open spaces and beautify the town in general. So more of those ideas will be coming out at future council meetings as well. So we had a broad-based community, a broad-based committee of people represented by both township officials and residents. And many of the committees here tonight, so when I call your name, could you just raise your hand so we know who you are? Of course, we have Mayor Mechanico, Chris Tinkin here, Chief of Police, David Petrikin, he was around, he might be in and out. We had a Board of Education representative, Eric Gardner. Eric's in the back. Our superintendent of schools was also involved. I know he's currently involved in a parent meeting. We had Fairway Music Association, Brian O'Gibney. Is Brian here? We had Beautification Committee Chair Deirdre Fallon. Deirdre's in the back. Environmental Commission Chair Pat Crippen in the back. Little League was represented by Tom DeFazio here. Youth Football, Bill Thurman. And then we had residents Galen Nolan. We had our former mayor, Elwood Malik. Is Elwood here tonight? No? Okay. Our recreation director, Sean Heater. Borough engineer, Joe May. And our borough administrator, Jay Delaney. The purpose of this committee was to brainstorm ways to upgrade, improve, clean, and use existing parks. As you know, this past Sunday, we had a cleaning event at Shore Road Park. That was one of the ideas that came out of this committee. We were able to implement that immediately. Overall, we want to provide ideas, the committee does, provide ideas for the council to consider going forward. And that is really the purpose of this meeting, to present the ideas that came from the committee so the council can think about them, hear from the committee members themselves, hear from the public, and we can come to some kind of consensus so we can move forward with beautifying the parks and making them better for everybody. So the overview, as the mayor laid out, since I facilitated the committee, I'll do the presentation. But really, after I'm done presenting and providing an overview and generally discussing the different options that you're going to see tonight, I'd like to open up questions by the council members, give them a chance to ask questions about these different options, and give a chance for the people who developed these options, the people that I introduced to you before, to answer any questions that they feel comfortable answering from the council. Because as the facilitator of this committee, I did not put forth options. My job was to facilitate the committee. So I wanted the people who actually came up with these ideas to be here tonight so they can enter into a dialogue with the council, and I'll certainly facilitate that along with the mayor. And then, as the mayor said, we'll have comments by the public. So the public will get to hear the discussion that ensues among the council members, with the committee members. That should give you additional information about these ideas. And then, of course, you're welcome to come up, and we welcome any comments that you have about the options that we present tonight. Mayor, can I proceed with that plan? All right, so overall, we looked at all the parks, ideas for recreation, environmental issues, and beautification. We held 2 meetings to brainstorm ideas and then discuss those ideas. And members of the committee focused mainly on the Allaire Road Park for the purposes of this meeting. And so, I know, being a member of this committee and being a member of this town, that there is a lot of passion and interest in Allaire Park for a lot of reasons. There's history there. The current condition of the park is not the greatest. It's not certainly what I want for Spring Lake Heights. I think our town deserves better than what that park looks like now. There's a lot of ideas on how to do that. And so I understand that everybody's coming here tonight with an intensity. I'm hoping that that intensity manifests itself in a way where we can all be respectful of the various ideas that come forth and value them. They're all going to be good ideas. And I just want to make sure that we all value the ideas that are brought forth, even if we don't agree with them, myself included. And so I hope that we engage in a collaborative community discussion in ways that respects all the ideas that are out there. So from our discussions, 4 ideas emerged based on a set of needs. So some of the needs that came out are multi-purpose fields, passive recreation space, overall beautification, overall environmental issues, and recreation opportunities for all members of Spring Lake Heights. Basically, 2 different needs emerged in terms of looking at Allaire Park. When we look at what came down from the committee and the comments we've received from the public in general. Number 1, the first idea, based on a need, was restore what's known as the Grove in Allaire Park. And for those of you not familiar with it, I'll be showing aerial photos. I'll show you what it is. Restore it to its original usable state so that there's opportunities that once existed for passive recreation like walking, bird watching, nature walks, relaxing, sitting, etc. Because in this town, we currently lack a large organized space for these kinds of things. Okay, so that's a need. The other need that came out from this committee was we need multi-purpose fields to expand active opportunities for children and adults. We're currently limited in this town in terms of our recreation programs, our growing recreation programs like soccer, lacrosse, softball, etc. Currently, portions of our soccer, I believe all of our lacrosse, some of our softball go outside of Spring Lake Heights and/or use substandard fields. For example, the front field of Bel-Air Park is a substandard field for softball. But overall, I can tell you, everybody on this committee, the one thing that we all had in common, the theme, was that we wanted clean, maintained, usable spaces. So we all come with that goal. And these needs are not, I don't think they're in opposition of each other, actually. I think to have a fully functioning recreation program, you need to look for ways to satisfy both of those needs. We considered many ideas. I received many ideas, members of the committee received, members of the council received many ideas, and we talked about them. Even the committee members developed their own ideas for ways to use our open space. These were just some of the ideas that also came out that we considered, because I know, I want you to know that we thought of almost everything, I think, when we were on this committee. So other ideas for Bel-Air Park: a roller hockey rink, a BMX bike trail, ice rink, covered pavilions, stickball facility. There were others. I'm just giving you an example of the wide range of ideas that came out. So you understand we did consider, we tried to consider all the possibilities. At the end of the day, 4 main ideas emerged from the committee. From those 4 ideas, we had all of these commonalities. So any option that you see tonight here include these commonalities. I'm going to show you 4 options. They all include these aspects. Number 1, upgrading the Fletcher property to passive recreation, keeping as many trees as possible. Some of you might know we're currently in the process of clearing out some of the dead or overgrown trees that are currently in the Fletcher property to begin to make that property usable for the town. Because in its current state, I guess, Ms. Cribbin, I think it's unusable in its current
It is
state.
a health hazard and a fire hazard.
Okay, it is a health hazard, potentially in a fire hazard. So what we're already engaged in trying to make that better. And that's an idea, no matter what I show you tonight, we're going to continue with that. Another idea transcends all 4 options is Hurricane Sandy did a number on the buffering around that park. The buffering needs to be replaced. The vegetation needs to be upgraded so that we respect the privacy and the overall quality of life of the residents who live around that park. And so that's something that will happen regardless of the option that's chosen. Passive and active walking trail that goes along and through the entire park. A lot of people came up with this in terms of trails that walk around just for general walking, but then a whole host of other people said, hey, why not put some exercise stations along those trails so you can have it both ways, passive or an active recreation trail. That's something that I think everyone on the committee agreed upon. So that would be something that we would do regardless of the options that are chosen. And then there was also general agreement that no more lights than already exist. And I know this is, and rightly so, I know this is a concern of the residents who live near the park, that it could potentially, be lit up like Disney World or something. And that's not, no one on the committee, I think at the end of the day, was pushing that idea. And Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was general consensus that regardless of what's done over there, no more lights are going to be added. The Little League fields already lit, and anything else that happens over there is going to be done during daylight hours. Okay, so first I want to talk about the Fletcher property upgrade. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, this is Allaire Road Park. Okay, here's what's known as the Grove. Here's the front softball field. Here's the Little League baseball field. And I believe this, more or less this spot over here is known as Fletcher property. Okay, that property, Mayor, was purchased in 2007 maybe? 2005? Pat?
8.
2000, all right, I'll split
You're
the
close.
difference, 2008. That property was purchased for open space 2008, okay? So what I'm gonna ask is, I'm gonna ask Mrs. Crippen to come up, and she actually has a model of what we'd like to do, what this committee agreed upon would be a good idea for Fletcher property. So I'm gonna ask Mrs. Crippen to come up, just show the model to the public, explain some of the options and the opportunities that are gonna be available should we choose to move forward with the Fletcher property.
Thank you, Councilman Tinkin. My name is Kathleen Crippen. I'm the chair of the Spring Lake Heights Environmental Commission. When the borough was first looking at purchasing this property, we were tasked by the mayor at the time to come up with a proposed use. We spent considerable amount of time. We reached out to members of the community. We talked to a broad section of residents, people that would be using the park. What did they need? What did they want? And we came up with a consensus, which we had presented to the council as a resolution. It was adopted to keep the park as passive recreation with some use as an arboretum, which is an area for specimen trees. This is a little mock-up that we came up with because everybody likes a visual, so I'll explain. The bottom is Allaire Road. The area where the house previously had been, we're proposing to turn the footprint of the house into a small parking area. That land is already disturbed. You would not have to take down any existing trees. You would just be able to go in there and level that. We like to see it done with bluestone because it's a porous surface. These represent the existing large trees that are in the front of the property. We have had them evaluated by a forestry expert. He said other than some fine pruning and trimming out, those were in good shape, so we're suggesting the addition of a picnic grove in there, possibly with some of what they call game tables. That it's a table with a built-in checkerboard or backgammon board right in the top. So that would be in there. We've had interest in a community garden. We do have some people who have experience running community gardens in other towns who, one of them lives in town. She is very interested in running this. This is still something that we would need to get permission. For those of you who don't remember, the park was purchased with 3 separate funding mechanisms. It was the borough's open space tax fund, it was the Monmouth County Open Space Fund, and it was the State Green Acres Fund. Now, State Green Acres is very stringent on what you can do and can't do on the property, so that's why the community garden, we have to talk to them about to see if it's something we would be able to do. Behind that, and I know we have some volunteers who are interested in doing a butterfly and meditation garden in the back. We would have a wildflower area to take advantage of some existing species that are already there and expand that and add some other endangered species and make that a little preserve area. In the center of the tract, it's very difficult if you haven't been back there, and there's mostly down trees now, but there is an area that's fairly level back there to leave that open parkland, and people could go back and, you know, you could always set up a volleyball net or play frisbee or whatever back there. It's just a nice open area. And then within the treed areas, we would have walking paths, there would be stations for bird watchers in there. This is very important habitat. We do have a number of raptor species that use this as their nesting area. We have a number of other mammals. I know everybody's seen the foxes around town lately. Bats are very instrumental in mosquito control. So it is very important to try to provide habitat for those species. And also, if the foxes have a place to live, they might not be wandering around your backyard as much, too. So it is important to have some place for them to go. When we looked at this property, we took into an account not just the people who live immediately around it, but the people in that end of town, and the people throughout town. There is currently a large senior population that's underserved by available parkland. There is also a very large population of apartment dwellers and condo dwellers who do not have available land. So I think it's something that everybody needs to think of, is that, you know, I own a house, I have a nice backyard, but not everybody has that. So you have to take into account the people that are basically landless. They want a place to go, they want a place to relax, they want a place to walk, to, you know, nature, whatever. So that was the idea for Fletcher, to keep this passive walkways, some garden ideas for special groups that wanted to help out and participate, and just make it for any age that wanted to use it. I know also we have some younger parents who said that their children are very small, they want to have a clean, protected place the children could go play. And also I've had people say, I want my kid to know what a tree looks like when he grows up. So we want to help preserve the trees. So, Chris, I guess we're going to hold questions till the end? Okay.
Yeah, are you willing to take questions from the council when we open it up to the council?
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
Absolutely. I just want to put that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to remind the council that this was something that the committee felt should be included in any option that's ultimately decided, because as Mrs. Crippen did say, it does provide a lot of opportunities for passive recreation that a portion of the town does not currently have access to. So we thought it was important to make sure to provide those opportunities. Okay, so as we go to option 1 here, I'm going to do an overview, but then I need someone from the committee who's willing to maybe provide a little more insight to the public in terms of this option. I'm going to do the best I can, but the people who came up with this option really know more about it than I do. So option number 1 is to, this picture is, I think it's pre-Sandy, because you can see the grove. This is known as the grove. It is completely intact. Here you can see that it's not intact. This is post-Sandy. So the proposal is to restore the grove to its pre-Sandy feature, include all the other things that I said we would include, and then you see these paths going through the park. Those would be the walking and exercise paths, okay, that we said, and then the rebuffering would take place along the outside of the park, so that our neighbors, when they look out their window, they see trees, and the noise is greatly reduced. So that's all part of it. Is anyone here who put forth this proposal want to go into more detail about that?
I don't know that I mean, this is a proposal that I support.
Okay, yeah, come on. Galen Nolan was a committee member.
Galen Nolan,
Okay.
he just outlined my house as part of the buffer there, which.
No,
That's my.
No, I didn't go through it, did I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. But, yeah, I've lived in this town my whole life. So, my mother's property is adjacent to mine. Both of these properties are adjacent to where I live currently. And so, ideally for me, and the surrounding residents, I know a lot of my neighbors and the apartment dwellers, we have seen with the decimation of the forest an increase in light pollution from the Little League. The noise has become increased. We would like to see it restored. My position, and this is probably for later, which I will comment on, is that if we probably do need a multi-purpose building, I don't think this is a place for it. It's a busy street. I believe that would be better suited. I would talk to the council or give them my request on that be located on the school property, which is more centrally located, and would impact fewer residents. But because of the fact that there are a lot of surrounding apartment dwellers and people that do live there that are impacted by development or increased fields from this park, that we would, and I think I speak for myself, and I know Peggy's here as well, she could talk on this, because she's also adjacent to the Fletcher property. As Kat said, we do sustain a large wildlife population. Those bats are incredibly valuable. Bats are having a tough time right now. Their populations are being in decline from an environmental, I'm also on the environmental commission. From an environmental standpoint, part of the Fletcher property is also wetlands, its own wetlands, so we're limited as to what we can do with that. But, so from an environmental impact, I think to restore what we have as open space here would, in my opinion, be something that I would support. So, and like I said, I will give you my opinion on the fields later on, because I recognize that there is a need for them, I'm just not sure that it's exactly the charity.
Galen, are you willing to take questions from the council when we get to that portion about the grove and those kinds of things?
Absolutely.
And Don too, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I would just say, in this is replanting the grove and bringing it, obviously slowly back to, where it was 10, 15 years ago. And again, as Galen said, since those trees have come down, the light pollution from the Little League field has increased dramatically in all directions. And I think this is obviously the cheapest. One of the things we've not talked about is money. That'll be a whole interesting conversation. But obviously, just replanting is probably the cheapest way to go and utilizing the fields that are still existing in town.
Anything else, Galen?
No, I think I had a thought with it, but I lost it, but I'll get it back.
All right,
Okay,
good, thank you. Okay, so that's option number one. You should all have copies of that, okay? Okay, option number two is this idea of the multi-purpose field. This addresses that second need that I showed you, that the committee talked about. And I'll go into detail a little bit about those needs in terms of fields, and then I'll open it up to the committee members who developed this idea. But currently, some of you may be aware that we have a growing recreation program. We don't have a field, a full-size multi-purpose field for our sports like lacrosse, soccer, flag football, and we don't have a functioning softball field. It's not a regulation softball field, and when you look around this town, our girls don't have the same quality of fields that the boys do. And as a father of two girls, I'm sensitive to that. I don't think it's right that girls have to play on a substandard field or some kind of a second-class field. Nor do I think it's right that the town in general would have access to those kinds of fields. So that need is there. In terms of the recreation, the overall recreation program, we're currently hamstrung a little bit. Let me use our soccer program, for example. Currently, our recreation soccer program uses some of the fields here at the school, but then we also have to travel to Mariucci Park in Belmar to use their fields. We have a growing interest in soccer, and we have plans to expand that soccer program, and it's going to be hard to do that without access to field space. You can't expand recreation programs without access to the space, whether it be passive. You can't expand passive programs without access to passive space. You can't expand active programs without access to, active space. So in terms of looking at this option two, I'll tell you the way I look at it, and then the people who developed it could talk about it. I see the Fletcher property as we're gaining property for passive recreation. We've already started to refurbish that property, and that will be available for active, passive recreation. It can only be used for passive recreation. In terms of the multi-purpose field idea, you can now put more recreation activities on that field. Now, some people might say, why can't you use the school? Because the town doesn't own the school. We don't tell the school what to do. We can use the school when the school allows us to do that. Now, currently, we have a very good relationship with the school. Supportive Board of Education, they're willing to work with the town. They're willing to share their properties with us. They're willing to let us use those properties. There's no guarantee that that will continue. We have a very supportive superintendent. Things change, boards change, superintendents change. I was a former assistant superintendent, and we allowed the town to use our fields when we weren't using them. It's hard to schedule a real recreation program when you're dependent on somebody not using the fields. So that's why this option would solve our field issues. I believe it also solves our passive recreation. But I'm just one person. I'm one person, that's all. I'm going to ask if anyone who put this idea forth would be willing to provide a little more input into this. Yeah, Mr. Thurman.
Hi, my name is Bill Thurman. I'm a resident of Lake Avenue. I've been a resident of Spring Lake Heights since 1993. For those of you who don't know me, I was a policeman in Cranford, New Jersey for 25 years. I finally retired in 1998. While I was a policeman, I learned early on that basically the more recreational activities that we could get kids involved with, the less problems we have. I love the passive recreation areas. Unfortunately, I've spent, 40 years now dealing with adolescent children, and if there's a passive recreation area, they're going to find something to do with it. And I found that having, fields, soccer, lacrosse, football, something that we can get the kids involved with, have them coached properly, meet, adults, maybe we can get them through their adolescent years without the problems that we've had. I was a member of the committee that the mayor had formed several years ago with Jeff Algor to deal with the problems that our kids have been had. There was some incidents with, kids getting hurt on the railroad tracks and things like that, and we tried to come up with a number of different projects or things that we could do to help these kids bridge that, change from adolescence to adulthood. For me, because I've been coaching football for over 30 years, I've been a Little League coach here in Spring Lake Heights for 14 years, and I guess about 10 prior to that in the other town that I lived in. It seemed to me to be a no-brainer. I've been coaching little youth football teams over on the front field of the Lair Field for the last couple of years. And after Sandy destroyed the field, or the grove, it seemed to me to be a no-brainer. Those trees were, pretty much destroyed. I have some great pictures in my phone, I guess I left over there, of the poison ivy, poison oak, and whatnot that grows there now. It's not good for kids to even, wander through there, and especially if they're allergic to that stuff. So I thought, far be it for me to understand the workings of things, but I figured it's a no-brainer. Clean out the rest of those trees that were old and knocked down and dangerous, throw some dirt in there, level it, we make it a field, and then replace those trees with around the outside of the property, make it a buffer. But that was my idea. So.
Bill, are you willing to take questions from the council when that time comes? Okay, all right.
Oh, also, president of Manasquan Youth Football and the Manasquan High School Booster Club as well.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Okay, here's a third option that came out. And as you can see, it's moving this field back into where some of the grove has been destroyed, making this a complete green space, like like the Great Lawn, perhaps. If you're thinking about Central Park, this would be our Central Park, all green space, open. The field would be in the back. It would be buffered by the grove here. We would restore the grove that's over here in right field. We'd have the Fletcher property for passive rec, and you would still have trails that can go all around for passive and active recreation. This would give our girls a regulation softball field. It would give our town a regulation softball field. It would give our adult male and female softball recreation a regulation softball field, and it would move that to the back. So when you are looking at Allaire Road Park, you still see the growth, you see a nice green space, and now we have space for any kind of recreation you want here, and dedicated to girls and adult softball in the back. Anybody want to, from our committees, anybody want to come forward and explain a little bit more about that option? Tom DeFazio, President of Little League.
Tom Fazio, president of Little League. Former president of Little League.
I'm sorry, Tom.
What we've come up against in recent years is the deterioration of the front field. And what often happens after a pretty substantial rain is that we lose that field for several days. It floods, the drainage isn't proper, and we get some angry parents who pay good money to have their kids play in our Little League program. Pretty upset. So what we thought was to mirror what is an already extraordinary baseball field with an equally extraordinary softball field. We've been given the privilege of hosting some great tournaments over at that field for our Little Leaguers. And when you go back and look at that grove and see what it's become post-Sandy, it's dangerous. It's the underbrush that has grown and grown out of control has contributed sticker bushes and poison ivy and ticks, and it's really not a healthy environment for those kids to be walking around in. If we could take the grove and replant it to the front of that field and give it the look that it had, and still give the kids a great option for a softball / t-ball field. I don't think we increase any traffic on Allaire Road, because the kids that are playing there already. They're just playing on something better. And they'll be playing on a field that, you know, that'll give them the experience that I think they deserve when they pay to play in our Little League. And again, traffic on Allaire Road, and on weekend days, there's traffic, and there's parking all up and down Allaire, several hundred yards on either side. I don't think that would be any different. But I think this option gives us an opportunity to give our kids a great spot to play. And I would be happy to answer any questions to that effect.
Good,
Excuse
thanks.
me, I have a question.
Thanks, Tom.
Can we have to wait?
Can you wait just till the public portion, please?
Sure,
Just
but
thank
he
you.
didn't explain what you're gonna do with the front field, what is now the girls' field.
It would just
What
be
do you
a-
propose to
just
do
open
with that?
space.
I had just, I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't explain it well. This field would just become a big grass field for open public space. And right now we have, I don't know how many people know about it, we have an organization in town called Play It Forward, and it's really an adult and I mean, it's all encompassing. It's an all-encompassing organization that runs activities to raise money for good causes. For example, we had an adult flag football game on this field, which was a disaster playing on that field, but the money raised for that went to help a family whose house had, I believe, burned down in town. So it's called Play It Forward. They run a lot of activities in the town, and it would be, having a great big field like that, we could, ultimate frisbee, all kinds of activities people could run there. So that would just, ma'am, that would just be a green field. Green field.
Okay.
I do have to say, this does not solve the multi-purpose field problem, okay? It does open up more opportunities for us, for sure. But in terms of that, the problem that I explained, that option 2, doesn't solve that option, but it does give the town more options than without it. Final option, option number, oh, I'm sorry, go, yeah.
Yeah, real quick.
Eric Gardner.
One thing just to add, to the front field would be kind of a short-sided field, for example. So it could be used for rec for the younger kids, you know.
Yeah, kindergarten, first grade soccer could probably do well on that. Lacrosse clinic, yeah, lacrosse clinics. Having a green field here would definitely help us. It would help us. Okay, ready, Mayor? Okay, last option that came out. Restore the Grove, put in a regulation ball field in the front. What that would mean is you gotta go back about 30, 35 feet into the existing grove. You need about 200 feet for a ball field, okay? So replant back here, move the ball field back into the grove about 30, 35 feet, we'd get a regulation field. Now, what that does is then you have you have this in the front of the park, okay? Now, I don't know about the fence, you guys would have to tell me about the fencing requirements. You can't put up you can't put up a fence like the Little League has here, okay? You would have to put up some kind of, what is it, like a takedown, up-down fence? Okay, so an up-down fence, you wouldn't have a full green space because you'd have the diamond in here, but you'd have a upgraded ball field there. So that was option 4. Does anybody else from the committee want to explain that option? Self-explanatory? Okay.
You did a great job.
All right, 1 out of 4, right, Cam? Okay, so at this point, I'd like to Mayor, I'd like to throw it back to you and open it up to the council members to talk to the committee members, and then public comment will follow that portion.
Any council member would like to ask a question of myself or Councilman Tinkin, or make a
Well, actually, the committee members, I think, would be able to answer the questions better.
Chris, we can't hear the mayor.
I'm
We
sorry.
can't hear you back here.
Is your microphone
Working?
Jake, we get
Hello? It's on.
pull it here, pull it a little. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Now,
Okay, committee members that had the option can answer any questions.
So, count, just,
Any council-
You want to go from Pat to me or from me to Pat?
ask the mayor, he's in charge.
Councilman O'Brien.
I just wanted to ask about the multi-purpose field. Was that, I mean, did you discuss, was that a grass field or an artificial surface?
Grass.
Grass field?
Yeah.
And do you know approximately how many trees that would need to be removed for the, have the softball field in the back? Yeah, I mean, did you look into that, or?
Do we have a numbers back there?
Yeah, just to answer your question, part of the, as this process started, one of the questions that came up was the condition of the existing trees. As I think the council's aware, earlier this year, late last year, we commissioned an inspection of the Fletcher property. That was concluded earlier this year. As this process started, we requested the same tree guy, our tree expert, to review the entire Allaire Road Park field. And that report was received today.
Yeah, that's the one that you just gave us.
Yes,
Right.
and has provided overall an indication that approximately 45 trees on the entire site should be removed because of their condition. And there were an additional number of trees that were identified that should be more closely inspected. The inspection that was done was a ground level review. What has been recommended is the same process we followed for the Fletcher restoration, was to remove the known trees that are at issue and review more closely with aerial inspection other trees. The exact location of those 45 trees has not been specifically identified in the report, although, as the report indicates, they have been identified
With a red dot?
with a red dot in the field.
Did you want to just go through, I just looked, there's a bunch of criteria for why those trees will be removed. I mean,
Would you like me to refer?
yeah, could you just go through because the public doesn't have this, right?
That's correct. Tree removal criteria, approximately 45 trees have been identified for removal, with an additional number identified for further inspection of the crown, which was beyond the scope of the ground level review. The following criteria were considered in determining if a particular tree should be removed. The tree poses severe safety hazard that cannot be corrected by pruning, transplanting, or performing other forms of treatment. Branch and trunk decay is present. Poor branch attachment. Branch has excessive end weight. Poor trunk taper. Low line crown ratio. Presence of codominant trunks with included bark, or lopsided lean. So trees that were identified as reflecting any of these characteristics were identified for removal.
Okay, so that was 45.
That's correct.
And what are the dimensions of the multi-purpose field?
It's essentially, well, we had laid out, it would fit, it's a little bit longer than, say, your average football field,
So it's more
but
than
it
100
is
yards?
as wide.
Okay.
So, You could play lacrosse, soccer, you know, you could have football practice there. Ultimate Frisbee, which seems to be my children's fad right now.
All right, that's all I have right now.
Councilman Shul, you have any?
I realize we need the facilities, but I'm just curious why we're not looking at Ocean Park and moving some of the stuff up there. We have fields up there that are underutilized, and we're going to overutilize Bel Air Park.
Well, you guys can only talk from the Little League perspective. Well, Tom can talk from the Little League perspective about that, so go ahead.
Well, I was
Ocean
thinking,
Road, are you talking in general about Little League or in Ocean Road Park essentially? Is that,
well, I'm thinking about the softball. They got a softball diamond up
yeah,
there.
it's the same thing, it's not regulation.
Not 200
It's not
feet.
200 feet out to the light post for the basketball courts, and as you swing around, so.
And also, I believe Ocean Road Park is a Green Acres Park, which means that park is open to the county, right? In a Green Acres situation?
The
Well, I
state.
think Bel Air Park.
The state.
So we can't really schedule something like that, right?
It'd make it more
Anybody
difficult.
could show up at any time.
Yeah, and Jim, I think, you drive by that, I wouldn't call Ocean Road Park, I live right across from it, I wouldn't call it underutilized. Trying to get on that field, the field or the basketball or the tennis courts, I would hardly call it underutilized.
And St. Catherine also uses that field.
Yeah, St. Catherine
as
uses
their
that field,
own-
yeah.
as their own field for practicing games.
Yeah, no, that's St. Catherine's home field.
There's all-
Just gotta watch when you're playing basketball when they're playing softball.
Yeah, also, it's worth mentioning that the Ocean Road Park, as well as Lair Road Park, are currently, we've already awarded a contract about a month ago for some planned renovations to both facilities. Essentially, they're simply upgrading facilities that are already there. For instance, at Alair Road Park, the tennis courts
Playground.
are scheduled for resurfacing and new nets, new fencing. Basketball courts likewise are scheduled to be resurfaced with new backboards, nets, as well as a slight adjustment of the size of the courts. And hoops, backboards and hoops. Additionally, the existing playground equipment would be totally replaced with both very young as well as small children, I believe the ages 3 to 5 and 2 to 5, and then the second set of equipment for those up to 12 years in age are being provided, as well as drainage improvements both in the playground top lot area as well as the front field. This project also includes some very minor renovations at the Ocean Road Park, upgrade of the restroom facilities, and likewise the basketball court is being resurfaced. One of the issues that was looked at Ocean Road is the available parking does not really support expansion of facilities. Yes, there is the existing ball field, basketball court, and tennis courts, but any upgrade would require additional parking that, because the configuration of that park does not really lend itself to expanded parking.
Anything else, Jim?
Anything else, Jim?
No.
Councilwoman King?
Has anyone considered the cost of taking all of the pine needles and everything out of the Grove area, whether it's partial or entire? I mean, you're talking about several feet of excavation over all the years.
I think I can shed some light on that. The Environmental Commission did retain a certified forester to come in and review the property about 6 weeks ago. And he had indicated that one problem there is the age of the growth and the depth of the composted matter under the trees. And he had cautioned about making any rush to judgment on putting anything there, because he said he's seen this happen in other towns. He is also the head forester for the city of Toms River. And he has seen this happen in towns where people have chosen a property that they want to convert into a playing field. They clear cut it, they go in there and start excavating, and then they realize it's not suited to its purpose. And then they say, oh, we have to go buy land someplace else. So you don't want to make that decision after you cut the trees down. You know, you would need to do some study on what's there. His feeling was that it would be prohibitively expensive. He said, he basically said, I don't know how deep the pockets are in Spring Lake Heights, but you're gonna need some deep ones to clean that out. And level it, because once you take all of that matter out of there, and you gotta realize the stumps. You have tree roots that have been growing very closely together. You can't just blind those stumps. You have to excavate them out. Then you have to truck in all of the dirt to make it level. So you might want to get an idea of the cost, because he felt that it was going to be very expensive.
Thank you. My next question, approximately a year to 18 months ago, I believe we were in this discussion about a multi-purpose field over at Allaire Road, and Bill, Bill Thurman, you were involved in that. And if I recall, Joe May did a study, and there was a concern about the perimeter and enough footage being available around the perimeter of it. How could we now turn around 18 months later and be thinking about a multi-purpose field again?
If I can try and recollect, basically, the multi-purpose field will provide a combination of football and baseball, softball, excuse me, but it still wouldn't be a conforming softball. South end of Park. The other concern we need to keep in mind is we have that utility building that would need to be removed and relocated. That would be in the way. So there are costs associated with that. As part of this panel, I will be able to answer questions. All these ideas are from other folks. I will give just as support, dimensions, and this and that.
Now also, if you can recall your memory of last year, when we were talking about the multi-purpose field back then, wasn't the driveway that would go around to the back, wasn't that going to have to be eliminated?
Yeah.
So the purpose of that driveway, as I recall being in town for all the years I have, was so that there would be access not only for the coaches to take their equipment back there, but also if an emergency vehicle was needed to go back there, that they could. So now if you put in a multi-purpose field and you have no accessibility to the back, you know, your convenience now has been eliminated, not only for the coaches, but also, God forbid, something would happen and you need an emergency vehicle back there.
Well, I would say it would have to be relocated. Buffer would get reduced, let's put it that way. All these fields, you need to keep in mind these are concept sketches. These were items that we just put together to generate ideas and discussion. You are correct that the existing path as it lies now would have to be either A, who's close to the property lines would be eliminated. And I know you are correct in saying the police do patrol the park. They do their loop. That is their circuit, so to speak, in the park. So that is a concern that we have to look at when the council decides to kind of focus on one idea. I think when the council decides what direction they want to go, then we need to really take some better surveys, better field layouts, how big safe areas you want around the fields, how much coaches areas, refreshment stands, whatever you may, or passive, how big is your path going to be? How big is your maybe sit or chin bar going to be? You won't have like little rec stations. Whatever we're going to do, we need to focus on the whole thing a lot more technical than we are now. And I just want to caveat that. This is just with the generate discussion, but you are correct with everything.
Thanks, Joe. And then also in reference to the buffer, after Sandy, there was a great deal of concern from residents around the park, and many of those residents are here tonight. If you look at some of these plans, for instance, for an all-purpose situation field, or if you look at a plan to put a ball field in the back
you're now taking away a tremendous amount of buffer from that grove area. And one of the things that many of the residents are concerned with is the fact that those trees towards the back, where a lot came down and a lot would have to be replaced, would now not be there at all if you take those two options of putting a softball field or an all-purpose field. So when you, as a committee, were getting together, knowing because many of the residents had already voiced their opinion, I'm kind of surprised that there was two options that came up that were going to totally eliminate a great aspect of the growth. So can you explain that to me?
Yeah, if I could, yeah, I mean, Chris indicated at the beginning.
I think that's incorrect, what was just stated. Can you
Yeah,
explain
because
that?
ultimately, what Chris indicated at the beginning was that all plans include that buffer around the entire perimeter of the park. So these plans are very preliminary, in art to scale. So, but ultimately, with either a multi-purpose or a softball field back there, that would still include the entire perimeter, whether it be, it needs to be designed.
Yeah, but
15
you're
feet.
talking perimeter, I'm talking the grove.
Right, but the perimeter being the backside, in between the field and the neighbors. The entire park would be lined with 15.
Yeah, but see, that's what the neighbors don't want. The neighbors don't want that back section of the grove taken away. They don't want the entire grove taken away,
Right, but the
let alone the back
section
section.
currently doesn't exist, it's just a fence.
No, but they want it replanted, they want it replanted.
Right, and that's what we're suggesting, that we'll replant the grove, a buffer around the entire perimeter of the park.
But that's not the grove.
No, I understand, but I'm saying that the field would not abut the property line, it would not be up against the fence without any buffering.
I understand, Eric, but the problem is that the people that have lived there for so long, they already know what the noise element is, and they know what the lighting and everything is, and there isn't going to be a substantial, buffer there if the grove doesn't exist.
I think what Eric's trying to say is part of anything that happens is the buffer. When I talk about the buffer, I'm talking about the property line, right?
Right.
So if I go to the back of the baseball fields, there's a property line that separates us from, let's say, the apartments back there, right? And at least what the committee talked about was along the property line, rebuffering and increasing the vegetation. Am I incorrect in saying that's what the committee talked about?
No, that's absolutely correct, and it's also my understanding that currently, where the grove, as the driveway comes around the backside, the grove is, for all intents and purposes, on the south side of the driveway, and always has been. So there's never been anything on the north side of the driveway, and that's what we're proposing to add. Make sense?
No,
We're
because
proposing-
you're taking the grove away.
Okay, I think Councilwoman's talking about the grove and we're talking about buffers. And so, yeah, the baseball field.
Yeah, but she had indicated that we were taking away that buffer. and
Oh, okay.
I don't think at least that's right.
My buffer is the grove. Your
She's
buffer
calling
is the
grove
perimeter.
buffer. She's referring to those as one and the
Okay,
same.
we should probably call the grove, and the buffer the property line. So that we're all on this, just so we're on the same page.
But which option are you talking about, though?
I'm
Because
talking-
there is existing grove in two of those options.
There is existing, the one is where you're taking away part of the grove, which is in the back, and that's to put the softball
And now
field.
you have, which
Okay.
has to be from where.
So
the
now
field-
you've got a buffer in the middle, which does
It's
nothing
actually-
for the residents.
And the road is basically the property line. You'd have to
Right.
do the road. Because the road is pretty much, there's not 15 feet between the property line and the road.
Yeah, there's
Probably the back of the street.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, in the back it's straight
On the
down.
side of the street, there has to be between the road and the property line. On the east side,
This is the east side, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, north side, east side here, good,
And
okay.
that north side road there there is not enough footage between the road and the apartment fence, or the park fence, whatever, to put a 15-foot buffer, much less, and I think we had talked about 30-foot buffer, but with the environmental commission, they went into that with the suggestion that we had referred to with, that our forestry guide suggested before
Right.
anything be done, that the buffers be in place prior to any improvements.
That's good, thank you.
Thank you. And then my final question is, when you sat down as a committee, why wasn't there an emphasis put on dividing things throughout town, Ocean Road, the school, and the lair? Because trying to lump it all into one park, or to make one park everything, just doesn't seem right to me.
All right, I'm not gonna, I guess, I'm not sure the committee members chose not to do that. I think through our discussions, we tried to look at the committee members, you jump in when you feel that I don't say something correctly. But I thought we tried to have an open-ended exploration of the things. The issue is, if even this option here, okay, then it requires us in some way, if we want to move forward with expanding soccer, or even making, right now, for those, I see some people with young kids in here, if you have young kids in soccer, one of the parents is at the elementary school, while the other one is shuttling someone to Mariucci Park. And that's great if both parents are around, if the child has two parents, and if parents are not working on the weekend. So if this isn't an option, and let's say something like this, or this is an option, we would still have to talk with the school about partnering with the school, both financially and through some kind of a scheduling arrangement, which of course, there's no guarantee because we don't own the property, but we would have to partner some way to upgrade the fields that out here. Those of you who know about the soccer field out here know that it also needs to be upgraded. So any option that doesn't include this requires further discussion with the school and probably some monetary investment on the part of the town, and then hoping that we continue to have a very supportive superintendent and supportive Board of Ed. But the school is a key player in this process, and we're going to have to work with them.
Mrs. King, just to maybe clarify something, as a committee, we did not come to necessarily consensus on all four of these. We kind of all came from different, so when you're saying, why would we, I personally, none of, you know what my choice is. So it wasn't as if the committee came to consensus on this. What we did, and Mr. Tinkin had the same slides for us to look at, and we did discuss all of the open space. Turns out there's a lot of open space in town that I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of. Under his leadership, we kind of decided to focus on this because of the issue with the all-purpose field last year. This seemed to be a priority, and because of the Fletcher property and the necessity to decide what to do with that, this was the priority to focus on now. But as a committee, a lot of us felt, yes, we do need to look into all of the open space and the parkland that we have in town. So it wasn't as if the committee came to a complete consensus and we said, we like all four of these.
No, this is just your four options.
These are just four options from different factions. We broke into groups, and obviously some groups, listed what their priorities were, and then Chris took them and he collated them, and this is what, as a committee, but it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a consensus as in one body. So I think that answers your confusion, or clears that up for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, the purpose of the committee wasn't to come to one option. It was, what's the committee thinking? And these four options came out, and then present those to the council for discussion.
With all different viewpoints.
Yes.
I just thought of something when you were talking. Joe May, how much property do we as a town own next to this Borough Hall? And where does the school property start and our property begin, or
Next
whatever?
to Borough Hall, I'd say it's about,
How far back from the roadway do we have?
it's maybe 45 feet
Okay.
parking lot.
Okay,
And then 15 feet west of the curb line.
Okay.
So it's very limited.
okay. Thank you.
Anything else, sir?
No.
Very good. Councilwoman Cindy.
Yes, as far as the two ball field plans that you have, I guess that's number
That would be
two,
option-
number 2 and 3.
Option 3 and 4, you mean?
Right.
Yes, 3 and 4?
It seems, I mean, is there any way that this plan would be switched? It seems like the balls would all be going into private property, or, you know, the Little League field is balls would all be going within the park property. And if you would switch on option 2, is option 2?
This is option 2.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 3 and 4. You mean 3 and 4. Now 4, if you would switch it so that the batting cage or whatever is on the
Home
other
plate.
corner.
We call it home plate.
Does that mean that we wouldn't have to?
No, no, you would still, you gotta get 200 feet, so you would still have to move into the grove. And I think we talked about it. Does anybody want to talk about moving home plate, flipping that around?
We talked about that.
Yeah, no, we did talk about it, and I suppose it's done this over.
Well, one of the problems was also putting bleachers and things in the parking lot, if I recall.
And then I think didn't we talk about foul balls going into Alair Road too?
I think on this option,
Possible.
this felt like the best idea. On the other option, I suppose we could consider flipping it, but.
So we have 2 fields at the school, 1 field at Ocean Road, and 2 fields at Aller Road Park. And like, my question is,
I think in
as
terms
far
of,
as upgrading a field,
yeah, well, I'm gonna let the Little League, but I know in terms of all of your maintenance, first of all, Little League maintains this field at a cost of $20,000 a year. The town doesn't pay any of that, okay? And so our thought was to keep that arrangement. And the way we keep that arrangement is if the fields stay together, because all of the equipment to maintain them is here. So that's the idea. If you start, and it can be done, it just, anything can be done with the right amount of money. When you start placing, similar fields with similar purposes in different parts of the town, that's fine. We just need to duplicate the equipment. Anyone want to talk about that? And also you have the shack, the baseball shack is here, all the equipment's here. It can all be moved somewhere else with the right cost. It's not a problem. But that's just another issue that we would have to think about.
So I guess then I'd also, generally speaking, I think, again, back to Ocean Road Park, it's really not Little Leagues or the towns to really own, maintain, take care of, schedule on, and use, kind of solely. So that makes Ocean Road difficult. And then in terms of the school, again, it's not the towns, they use it for school teams. The baseball field is too large for Little League, and the softball field itself, quite frankly, we have issues at the school already in terms of that not technically being a regulation because you have that large tree in center field.
I think there's scheduling issues too there too.
Scheduling issues, yeah, we do our best to kind of share a little bit as we can with the softball field currently, but it's not ideal by any stretch. Again, maintenance becomes an issue, shuttling kids back and forth becomes an issue, scheduling is an issue.
so are you saying that if something like this would happen, the maintenance would be taken care of by the Little League?
I mean, I think the board would probably the Little League board would need to vote on that, but I think informally some discussions were had that, that would be the commitment that we would make. Similar to the baseball field, we would commit to maintaining the softball field as well.
And the bulk of the cost,
Pardon me?
the bulk of the cost to maintain that is in the infield, where we've added dirt over the years to try to mitigate the flooding issue and the drainage issue.
Which is
To kind
being
of
taken
crown the
care
field.
of.
We do that. Little
Yeah,
League does.
They do that.
The only thing that is not taken care of on that field right now, where it currently exists, is the grass, and the town cuts that.
Right, but the drainage issue is going to be taken care of in the upcoming grant.
Yeah.
So that's no longer going to be an issue.
We hope.
I hope so.
But
It's the reason why we're paying for that.
But Councilman, there is more to infield maintenance than just the drainage. The drainage is gonna help a lot. That's very helpful. But I mean, these guys are spending, just on this field, how much did you spend this year?
On the backfield there, $16,000.
Okay.
For renovation.
I mean, you don't spend that much every year, but you.
Partial renovation.
Partial renovation. So, it sounds like they're gonna talk about keeping that cost to them, although the town could use it.
But it's not, and it's not just drainage, the field needs to be properly crowned.
Oh, yeah, no, believe me, I've been on that thing. Yeah, I know.
And
It's more like a sandbox right now.
the other thing I want to talk about too, on that field, if you look at option 3 and 4, option 3, that has a 200-foot scale, right? I don't know if it really goes out.
It doesn't go out that.
It doesn't go
No,
out to the
and
road.
it should be in line with this right here, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same, it should be the same size.
It should be the same size as, yeah.
And the other thought being is if you take that back to 175 feet, because first of all, if you could show me an 11 or 12-year-old girl that will hit that ball 200 feet, I'll be impressed. It's been done, it's rare, and if they do it, more power to them. But in going back to Sarah's earlier comment about the grove, what exists there, even if you took that right field back to 175 feet, there has to be, and I don't know if my estimation is right or wrong, a good 100 to 125 feet of grove that gets preserved. If you do that option. And if you do option 4, that back grove has to be 300 feet or more. So there'll be plenty of buffer provided by the grove. We could use both in conjunction.
On option 3, the buffer is between that field and the existing front field. It's in the middle. That's not going to serve anybody any purpose.
125 feet of it?
No, because it's in the middle. You're dividing it, you're cutting it up.
Okay.
I think what Tom might be saying is, this buffers everything that's going on back here. Is that correct?
But then again, also, it's important to note that currently, nothing exists up against the fence on the north side there. And generally speaking, the plan from the committee was that there, whether it's, I think maybe 10 feet from the driveway to the fence, and then, I don't call it needs to be designed, but 10 feet from the driveway to the beginning of the field, there's 20 or 30 feet that could be replanted, or actually not even replanted, but planted, never existed before. Not 2,700 lineal feet around the entire perimeter at 30 feet is what? How many thousands of square feet of new plantings that currently don't exist?
But in this situation, or in option 4 situation, as Ms. Crippen brought to our attention, she already had a forester, was it, go in there and say that that area that you're going to excavate to put either of those two fields could end up being a problem.
Certainly, and I think, Joe indicated.
And a cost, huge cost.
Absolutely, and I don't think we're asking as a committee, the council to vote on a certain dollar value tonight.
Oh, no,
just taking the next steps, and so
But I
we
think,
may hit a
it's
roadblock down
important
the
for the
road.
public to know that,
Yeah,
there's a huge cost factor involved.
There potentially could be, absolutely. And there's a cost to rebuilding the grove as well, so.
Right.
And I think, so the important thing here is that option 4 solves the problem for softball, I suppose. But we still don't have a multi-use field in town anyway with this. You'd be sharing the outfield and the infield like you currently do. All you're doing is shifting it back to make this a recreational field. So this solves the problem for people who want to grow, and this solves the problem for softball field. But there's still so many other needs out there that it doesn't solve. So, I think that's important.
I have a little bit of problems with spending money on as everybody knows, I'm the frugal one up here, and spending money on a softball field or baseball field when we have we have 5 options in town. I'm assuming that at school, the general public can contact the school and possibly use the field, or is that not the case?
They can, there's a process, but there's scheduling and,
I mean, has there ever been a case where all 5 fields have been used at the same time?
Oh,
Yeah.
all the time. We constantly have a shortage of fields.
Ocean Road, including Ocean Road?
There's a lot of open time on that Holy Field. Yeah, over there, right, Saturday nights, there's not.
I'm shocked, but I'm
And we'll open it up now.
I think Ken has a question first.
Yeah,
I think Ken has. Ken, do you have something to say?
I just wanted to clarify something that was said over here about Green Acres. There seems to be a lot of confusion about that. Green Acres is grant funding from the state. It does not mean the state owns the property. It does mean that they put restrictions on it, but the borough owns the property, and the borough has the right to reserve blocks of time. The borough, and this is something this town has never done, the borough has the right, you, as the council, can legislate hours and usage of the parks. Now, and I never understood this because Ocean Road Park, there are people from out of town who come here to run paid-for leagues and use that for profit to make money for their pocket, and the taxpayers of the town pay for the maintenance of that field. Now, tell me how that's appropriate. So this town can put restrictions on the usage at Ocean Road Park, at how many times it's used, when it's used. They can implement permits if need be. People are supposed to get tennis permits. I don't know the last time the town gave one out. So you do have the right to restrict the usage there. It's our property. It belongs to the taxpayers. And I also want to point out too, the same way with the school. The school property, it's not a matter of the borough doesn't own it, the school owns it, the taxpayers own it. And we elect, the school board is elected the same way the council is elected, and they are supposed to be looking out for the interest of the majority of the town. So if it's something that shared services, as you know, are very big right now. If it's something that everybody would be interested in having a field there, personally, with the declining enrollment, but you're trying to attract people from out of town to go to school there, if you put a football field at that school, you'd have that place filled, because every parent would want their kid to go to school where they have their own football field. For grammar school, that's a selling point. So that's something to consider too, in addition to the Green Acres.
Thank you.
Yes, so as far as option 4, we can't flip it, we still have to cut down trees. And that was my main, to find out if that was, we could prevent that. Now, as far as getting, doing number option 1, and restoring everything to its original state, since all of this damage resulted from Sandy, can we get FEMA money for that, or is that done and over?
We did receive FEMA funds for the removal of the downed trees. Tree restoration, FEMA would pay for park restoration, but not tree replacement. So we did receive FEMA funding for Sandy storm-related damage, but not restoration.
And do we have any idea what it would entail to restore it?
Well, restoration is a great word that can take many forms. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, and I profess no specific expertise in trees, but the grove as it existed 3 years ago is gone. To restore the grove to what someone may remember being there 40 years ago will take 40 years to replace. Because even if you were to restore the grove with replacement or with new trees, you're not going to replace them with specimens that are that size and that age. You would spend a lot of money on even 8-foot trees that would take 30 years to mature to the level of what most people remember the grove being even 30 years ago. And that's one of the points that has not been made but should be made. So it has been pointed out that even in the last 2 years post-Sandy, with the amount of trees that have been removed, there is so much more growth going on at ground level that was never there before. So a lot of people that haven't been there recently should probably take a closer look, and you'll see that there is a substantial amount of native undergrowth that includes poison oak, poison ivy, that is quickly rendering that space as unusable for passive recreation. But to answer your question, I don't know what the cost would be to restore that, whether you go a restoration that would be phased over several years to maintain it as a tree passive recreation use, But certainly, what was there 3 years ago is not replaceable.
Now, I also have a question as far as the traffic that any of the ball fields would, whether it's the football field or the softball field. And having a daughter that went through Little League and knowing how wonderful the Little League keeps that, the main field, and how well that is used. And as you pointed out, Mr. DeFazio, that people would actually, other towns try to get on that field because it's so, didn't you make that comment? And the parking can be very hazardous, and by virtue of the fact that you have kids, and you might have kids starting out in front of the street, and I would hate to see something like that. My question is, why do you feel that if we redo the softball field or a football field, that wouldn't be a traffic nightmare? I thought that might be
I think we're already playing there, right? Softball already plays there. Softball already plays there.
Earlier that,
They just play on a substandard field.
and by substandard, I think it's important to note that essentially just, and I think it's important, this really shouldn't all be about Little League because, again, like I said before, this option really.
Well, it is if you use this option.
Right, but so currently, the backfield, as amazing as it is a baseball field. So we teach right now our girls on the baseball field. There's not supposed to be a mound, there's not supposed to be grass on the infield. So we do it kind of backwards because we also teach our young baseball players on the front softball field to teach them baseball on a softball field. So currently, what we have doesn't really even make sense in general. So I think that's a need as well, that's important.
And that's just addressing two sports, not
Correct.
the multitude of other sports that our kids play in this town.
As far as the multi-use field, it wouldn't appreciably increase the amount of traffic because they wouldn't have games there. It would be for practices, essentially, and that's
Also different
dropping kids off, picking them up. And goes in different seasons than baseball, though lacrosse and baseball is.
They're all the same
they're at the
season
same time.
nowadays. Everybody plays 365 days a year.
All right, do you have anything else, Councilwoman?
Okay, so I just want to confirm that the drainage for the front field, the problems that were brought up about that, that's being addressed in Joe. And Joe, can you, do you have any idea what it costs to make, forget about the pine needles and everything else, but just to do a field, an athletic field? And it doesn't matter if it's softball to me or.
It does matter, actually, the costs differ, right?
Yeah. We're doing another field in another town right now, St. Joe's Turf Field.
What do you mean by turf, synthetic or grass? All right, do grass.
Well, I just want to back into the grass. Synthetic field, you're talking.
Speak up, Joe.
Synthetic field, you're talking about 1.2 million.
That's artificial,
That's
that's.
artificial, that's for running track, that's, collegiate level, essentially. Backing down into a high school level bleacher, you're probably talking 675, 750. And backing down further into something that I think would meet.
Back to Little League.
Back to Little League or, an intermediate school level field, you're probably talking 300,000 in that range. And we would have the soil testing, how many drains you need. So it's a very vague number at that point. So you get a soil analysis, the environmental committee stated we'd have to see, do we need 2 feet of fill or 6 feet of fill? Is the ground good for drainage? Do we have to add a detention basin in? Is there clay pockets? Is there soft areas? There's a lot of moving parts at this time. But that number would definitely be feasibility have to be done when an officer shows it and see what exactly can't be done with the budget that we have.
Is there any more grants that are available for open space or
Well,
to purchase?
there's grants that come out, biannually, Jay, and,
To answer the grant question, Monmouth County has an active recreation open space program. Probably the most likely for this type of what would be termed a development, recreation development, would be the State Green Acres program that provides low interest, 2% 20-year loans. And that is not a grant, it is a Green Acres funds grants for acquisition but they also fund development for recreation with a 2% loan, which is very good money for 20 years.
And can we use any of the, our own open space fund?
Yes, Spring Lake Heights has a 1% annual tax for open space, recreation purposes.
And has any consideration been as far as possibly buying the field next to by the school and with the deed restriction or something like that, so that the school can still use it, but then
Mr. McCarthy, do you want to sell that to us?
has that been discussed?
Please, we're nice.
I thought somebody discussed that at one point. I thought I heard that it was going to be an option.
Yeah, no, I think it was floated out during one of our committee meetings, but I don't think it's possible. And I suppose anything is possible, but, you know.
All right, we want to open this up to the public. They've been waiting patiently. Let's,
I commend you on your patience.
thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm going to open it up for public comment.
Thank you.
Just step forward.
Looks like it's right here. Okay, go ahead.
Well, you know, we're long-winded up here, Ed, so.
Remember what I told you? Don't start the clock on me yet. Remember what I told you about the 5-minute rule? Well, I'll tell you when to start the clock. Okay? My name's Ed McGurk. I live at 1208 Allaire Road. First off, I want to say something. The Allaire Road Park has got another name, right? Joe Robertson Park.
Yes.
Okay? We don't use that name anymore. So let's go with what I want to get up there and say. I lived there 37 years, next to the Fletcher property. You can see my house there. So the history is, back in the 50s, the Fletchers bought that piece of property, and there was a piece of property that went from the back end up to Allaire Road. When Mr. McGregor from Spring Lake put the deal together to build the Colony Club apartments, the Fletcher sold the part of the property that went up to the Allaire Road. So there was a little piece of property left, and guess what? Mr. McGregor built a house on it for his wife. And there I sit, 37 years later. So, you know, but you can start the clock, because I'm not, you know, we're going to be up here 3 or 4 times. So, let's see. I don't know what we're doing. Let's see, Mrs. Fletcher passed away, and Mrs. Fletcher was over there by herself. So a councilman from this town went over and tried to buy the property off Mrs. Fletcher. And when he couldn't do that, he cited eminent domain. You don't mess with Mrs. Fletcher. So that went down the drain. And I said to him, what about residential? He said, well, if you put in anything residential, I'll build a road right next to your house. I said, good, build a road. I've had a lot of councilmen and councilwomen in there showed me that property, okay? The first councilman that came in there, God rest his soul, so you can probably figure out who he was, and a very good friend of mine. We walked back there and he said, I'd like to build a soccer field. What do you think? What do you want me to do? I said, you have to vote your conscience. Brought a councilwoman back there one day, and she said, if we go residential, you know, somebody come in and build condos. Fine, I'll sell them my house, and they'll have more property, okay? So I've been threatened. You know, I look at this, and I wonder, you know, I'm thinking about my quality of life. I'm thinking about when I go to the great beyond, what my house is going to be worth. And, you know, I'd like to pass something on to our doer, you know, so she could, you know, with the prices these days, she's going to need something. And I also wonder whether my civil rights are being trampled on. Now, huh? Hey, I come up with anything. I'll get Ron Kuby if I got the butch, you know? So, can I ask a question to the law, to the
Mr. Keneally?
Mr. Keneally? That's a residential zone. Can you do anything with a residential zone? Can you put that stuff in there in a residential zone?
You can, the townships,
Okay, you answered the question.
That's good, yeah, save us a little money.
Same as time, the answer is yes.
Hey,
One word, good.
Tell Mr. Tigan, I said, you know, I asked that question for a reason. Okay? Now, and I stopped the clock. That is a piece of Green Acres property, right?
Open space, yeah.
Yeah. So, it started off, Public Works was taking care of that property. Me and Mr. Herner were talking, and he had ideas, so did I. And there was a meeting in the mines. There were three buildings on that property. There was a garage there. Okay, there was a barn there. And the house was there. Well, the garage was in pretty good shape. And Mr. Herner at that time had enough people who could have taken the old roof off and put a new roof on. So I read in the newspaper, well, we could build storage and comfort stations in there. We could have used that building for that. Okay? So that got torn down by somebody who was, you know, who took the property over. And then, yeah, the garage was a double-car garage, which,
I believe there was something wrong with the headers and feet in there.
no, he felt that if they took the roof off, they could put a new flat roof on it. And it could be used for storage and nothing about the comfort station. Okay? And I think things went in too fast, too soon, when Public Works lost control. Okay? The garage and the barn were torn down. Okay? Later on, the house was torn down. So, if you go with this, you gotta run water in there. There was water in there all the way back to the end of the driveway. I look at this parking. There's a driveway that goes back about 170 feet in case the police, fire, first aid, or public works needs to get back there. What are they gonna do, drive, you know? I see this service lane here. Well, in 2008, I came to a council meeting after the borough bought the property. I asked the mayor at that time, can I have a setback? I did talk to you about this, but, you know, just for your information, no, nothing else. And he said, you got 25 foot. There's nothing in writing, and I don't have a copy of the minutes of that meeting. So that will be at the board's discretion if you want to give me the 25 foot, you know? And I look at all this stuff, well, there's still trees to come down. So, you know, oh yeah, and I get the community garden. Well, there's a lot of animals over there. So don't blame me if anything gets taken out of that community garden. And don't come on my property to use my water, or I will call the police department and prosecute you. And you know one thing, I ain't lying.
I
My 5 is up, Butch. Thank you very much. Thank the council for listening to me. And remember one thing, you're the guys who make the decisions. Thank you very much, and I may be back when my head comes up with more reasons. And I'm glad you're laughing because the first time since 208, we're laughing about it, you know? But it's hung over my head since the time Mr. Fletcher died and I got threatened. And that did not make me happy. And I lost a couple phone numbers we could have straightened things out.
Thank you. Yes, just give your name and address, you have 5 minutes.
Margaret, 5 minutes. Margaret Melchior, 2 Jeanette Court, Spring Heights. I had something prepared tonight, but the council took care of most of what I wanted to say. But I do recommend that the committee goes back to work and to discuss the costs involved, especially for developing and expanding the field, for removing the trees, the brush, for planting trees and vegetation, to also explore the feasibility of the fields that we discussed. Ocean Road Park, I've been there a number of times, and I have seen the tennis courts active, the basketball courts, but not much activity on the fields. And there looks like there's a lot of property here that can be utilized. I don't know what the acreage is, I don't know what the size of it is, but it looks like that's something that would be workable and doable. The park itself, Alera Park Road, is extremely crowded. I'm happy to say that it is very lively and utilized and using almost every bit of space that they possibly can. The quality of life for the homeowners, what about the apartment plans? There's 3 apartments that are affected by these moves. So I think we should take their quality of life into consideration. We're talking about the Fairway News complex, Ocean Air, Spring Lake Manor, and I think the Homestead. And what about the petition that I brought to the council a year ago, signed by 150 people, many of them who are here this evening, and they do deserve an answer. Maybe we should put this on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Cindy at 309 12th Avenue. I'm a member of the Environmental Commission. I'm also a landscape architect. I'm also on the zoning board in town. What Joe May said is correct about investigating this a lot further. My suggestion to you would be to maybe hire a landscape architecture firm who has expertise in, park planning, evaluate available open space in town, and see what the best uses for, the available space that we have. It may cost some money there, but these people will be able to guide you. They'll site, ball fields properly. They'll provide, proper vegetative buffers. They'll give you ideas on costs. As far as excavating the composted materials, like Pat said, you could look at $50,000 to $80,000 for that. Taking down those trees, it could be a week and a half, 10-day job just to do that. There's a lot of initial costs that, if you went out for grants, you might be able to get the money, but my guess is you're probably going to have to bond for this if you want to really do this, and then that's up to us. Do we want to pay for a bond to build these fields? I don't know how much available property there is in town, but I think it's to our interests to hire somebody or hire a firm that can investigate it and see what's able to be developed. That would be my suggestion. Costs are important, of course, but I think if you had somebody that had expertise in this, it could steer you a lot better than where we are right now. This is a good discussion and a starting point, but if we're really interested in this, we should be doing something like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don Nolan, 1022 Alair Road. I'm a physical education teacher in Little Silver. I've been doing this for 25 years. We have a shared agreement with town. I walk out my gym doors, I go to the most beautiful fields you could ever play on. Grass is this high today, it's lush, I've got kids playing ultimate frisbee, they're falling down, they're not getting injured. I can't see, if we have a space right outside the door, that we shouldn't put a field there where we could utilize lacrosse, soccer, football, and use it, and then have the kids in town use this field. Okay, the town can pay for it, and then every kid in a physical education setting can use that field. So, you know, I hear people saying, well, I don't know if we can do a shared agreement, I don't know if we can do scheduling. I've been doing it for 25 years, never had an issue. Okay, kids are in school, that's when the fields are being used by phys ed. Kids are out of school, obviously there may be some teams that the school may have that are going to use that field. Come 5, 6 o'clock at night, they're open. Anybody, you know, the town can schedule. So that's number one. The buffer. One of the things we're not really looking at this buffer in the Grove is the fact that the lights on that Little League field are 75 feet high. So you can replant the buffer all you want. Okay, you can go do all that planting, but you're going to put trees in that are 10 feet tall. They are not going to block a light that's 75 feet high. So when you lose that grove, all that light is going to go into the apartments. Okay, and I see it, my house is right there. I see it right now because we've lost some trees. I got lights in my bedroom, 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. So, you know, that's the buffer to me, that's the growth. I think before you put new fields in, you should be doing a traffic study. And then I'll throw something out to Little League, and I know you won't like it, but in Little Silver, they play Little League on skinned fields, meaning that there is no grass infield. So you can utilize girls softball on that field, you can utilize boys baseball on that field. So now you don't have to have 2 different fields for 2 different types of kids. As far as a pitcher mound goes, they bring in a fiberglass pitcher's mound for baseball, they take it out for softball. So those are just some thoughts. And lastly, yeah, the poison ivy in that grove is growing. I gotta be honest with you, the town does a terrible job of cleaning up inside that grove, and they do not maintain it properly. And I don't know that the town has resources for it. I think in the last 10, 15 years, this town has gotten too cost effective, and we are not spending money properly. Okay? And sometimes we have to open up our wallets to maintain things. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to say that I'm very nervous. Now that that's out of the way, my name's Don Chinches. I live at 1004 Alair Road. You can see it on that picture. And I was just thinking that, you know, no matter what, like you said, the youth athletic programs are growing, and if you do put a field back there eventually, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but it will be used for games eventually, if it keeps growing. So you will need lights eventually for night games and things like that. So, I mean, lights and things will have to be put in if the field is to be used to its full potential. And the second point I wanted to make was,
just in reference to Central Park. Central Park was put in New York City so there would be an enjoyable place for people to be in an ever-expanding urban environment. So if you're going to remove all the trees and put fields down, what's the point of having a park? And that's all I have to say.
Could you put up the slide that shows the multi-purpose field for a second? That one. Okay. How, I think Councilman O'Brien asked this, and I'm not sure, I think I heard the length was 300 feet. Was the response you got?
They said it was about 100, like the length, at least Mr. Thurman said it was a little bit longer than the length of the regulations for parking. So yeah, 300 foot, it's 100 yards or 300 feet.
Okay, so 300 feet, and how wide?
Plus end zone, plus safe area.
Okay. Okay, and how wide? Anyone?
50 yards.
It was wide enough that you could,
So 150
just about. I think depending on where we put that road. If you increase that buffer towards the fence line, you're going to have to move that road in a little bit, so it's not going to be as wide as a regulation field.
So I'm just looking for footage, 150 by 300 feet, wide by law?
About 50 by 100. 50 yards by 100 yards?
Yeah, let's say
Something like
50
that.
yards by 100 yards.
50 yards by 100 yards, okay, so that's 150 feet by 300. Okay, you had some very good suggestions.
165 feet on the sideline to sideline, plus a 12-foot leader here on the side. So 165, 24, 189.
Councilman City, I think we brought up possibly some school option, which seems to me to be a good idea. Number one, you're in close proximity to the police department. If you've ever gone down O'Leary Road and there's a lot of traffic, I know I have, boy, my child could have been more than 7 years old, and he almost met with the bumper of my car. So we're going to be adding more to this. We need to also have a little bit more maybe walkways and those signs, yield to pedestrians would be helpful. But while we talk about all these fields, and I think using the school or seeing if we could have an agreement with them, what I notice in town is we have programs for youth, and we had a resident in town who was very steadfast for our senior citizens. But there seems to be no recreation for everyone. And we don't seem to have any programs that might take into consideration anyone who's disabled. Why is that? So if we're going to be clearing down groves and trees, and I'm not necessarily a big, let's build something, but you could put a building there, smaller than that field, that would be a center of creative arts. Somebody wheelchair bound can still learn how to do pottery or learn to take a cooking class. We need to kind of go beyond the athletic arts and sometimes think that we have residents that are not always the best ambulatory, and we seem to forget that they exist. And that's kind of sad. It really is. Thank you.
Anyone else like to?
Brian Grendel, 728 Wall Road. I think a couple things have come out of the discussion and that weren't necessarily taken into consideration. And the fact that Ocean Road Park is used by St. Catherine's, but yet we're not allowed to use it ourselves, I mean, that's ridiculous. The current front field, you're saying is right now unusable because of drainage. Well, correcting the drainage, which apparently is going to be done, is got to be a lot less costly than putting a practice field for football in the back. The school fields should really be considered for both multi-purpose and nice softball facilities. as well as the Ocean Road. And there's really no reason to put in more fields. Why not just take care of the ones we have instead of adding more fields? What is the current projection for enrollment for all these fields that are going to be used? Isn't it true that it's possibly on the decline?
Yes.
That's all. Thank you.
Cat Crippen, Atlantic Avenue. I just want to follow up on something that Mrs. Murphy had said about possibly building something there. At last month's zoning board of adjustment meeting, there was an application where a developer wanted to put 8 townhouses where the Junior Junction preschool is. That application was subsequently withdrawn. A number of people, residents from the area came out, spoke against it. It was withdrawn. However, after that meeting, a number of those people were asking why couldn't the borough possibly consider buying that building and turning that into another community center, because the community house that we have, and I know Jay has a grant proposal out there to try to get money to add on to it, but it's very small, and no matter how you would expand it, it's still going to be small. So it might be an option, since people were interested in that building, because it's already laid out like classrooms, and you could use it year-round. And in winter, recreation could run things like arts programs or theater programs, something like that. So I just wanted to mention that, to piggyback on what Rita said.
Thank you, Ken.
Gail Nolan, 1022 Alair Road. My husband speaks much more eloquently than I do. He took a lot of my points. But I just have a question. If we were to go to a softball field, right now I know you said Little League maintains that field at a cost of $16,000 a year, I think they said last year. That is not owned by Little League, is that true? And this is kind of an ongoing question of mine. Does Little League lease that field from the town? And
Yes.
we appreciate that they maintain it. But do they also have controlling rights of it because of that maintenance? And would that be the same situation if we were to do a softball field then for Little League as well?
I don't know
I
the
believe there's
details
a
of
contract, Jay, somewhere.
Yes, there is a lease agreement between the borough and the Little League, the details of which I don't know as far as how long the term
Are
is.
those public? Can we get those?
Absolutely,
Okay.
sure. But to answer your question, yes, the agreement in general provides for the Little League to have primary use of the field. It may be exclusive use of the field, and in exchange, they maintain it.
That's, okay, so it's more of an exchange then. I mean, I've heard rumors that it's $1 a year, you know, that
I've seen
to
it.
some extent, that it's very minimal, but if they're maintaining it, but also if they're maintaining it for their use only, because I know there are signs there, don't go on the field when it's wet, blah, blah. So then it's restricted to those of us that are, and I also raised 3 daughters. They all played high school softball and did fine on the existing fields, on that little field, and we did go to Marucci. It was cold in the winter, in the fall, but they did fabulously and enjoyed every moment of it. My daughter Katie's here, she could attest to that. But I just was curious, and like I said, if we were, and I know the all-purpose field still doesn't address the issue of the softball field, if that's a concern. So, like I said, where I stand. But, and I would like to see the park cleaned up. I walk through there pretty much every morning before school. I'm also a school teacher, and the poison ivy has taken over, and so it does need to be maintained. It needs to be cleaned up, I think, to start, and I think that would be a very low cost place to begin. And then we do need to have some more meetings. And this, I thank Chris because this has been wonderful. Really, thank you.
Sean Dieter, the Recreation Director in town, 615 Blanchard Parkway in West Elmhurst. I've heard the recreation concerns being expressed, and I will say community center, some stuff with the field use. The biggest hassle, and I think Jay and I have communicated about this recently with the community center as we try to expand programs, is access to facilities or scheduling in particular with the facilities. One of the challenges that I see as we do look to expand, and we're in communication. One of the latest communications just today, the lacrosse coach, the women's lacrosse coach at Manasquan High School wants to come to the Heights to start up a little feeder program in the Heights and run lacrosse through recreation. So that's something that's in the works. We do have some, right now, exercise courses to reach kind of the, I don't know if I should be using this term, but the middle age. But we already have the trend.
You'll be there soon.
So, just for an age range there. But as I'm working on that, it's scheduled. Again, community center, looking for time slots there. And the challenge that I think I see, and I hope people understand this, council, everybody in general, is that whatever decisions are made as we're looking at it from a recreation standpoint, is that it's about all of the people in the town. It's not, it's about the kids and seeing that they have something to do, but it's also about all the way up to our senior citizens and making sure that their activities are there. And I know I'm working with Chris, we're making a push to try and expand the program to make it more diverse and to offer more, not just for the kids and give them more activities and exposure to different sports, but to increase our programming where we've taken on what Trendsetters did a great job setting up from the exercise standpoint. It took me 4 to 5 months, I think, right, to get that fully organized and up and running, just because of getting the scheduling situation organized where people understand what, at least from my standpoint, we're in this for recreation purposes, so that we can expand to other programs and move forward from there. But again, I think space is important.
Thanks, Sean.
You'll notice, would it be an answer? I think the first thing, the question was, would another building be an answer? I think the first thing would be to tighten up scheduling to see first, because I go through the schedule and it's booked by different organizations, and it's learning that some are there for an hour, others are there for 3 hours and different time, creating more consistency with the scheduling first, and then I think we have a better idea if there's a need.
The building isn't conducive to the creative arts, isn't
That's valid.
conducive to pottery classes, isn't conducive. Project Runway is a very big thing, but there's no where to teach a young teen to sew. I think there are plenty of residents in town who might have an old sewing machine and they would mind dusting it off and helping volunteering.
It's valid, it's something to consider in the future, and space.
Thanks. Thanks, Sean.
Yes.
Well, I've heard so many comments here this evening. My name is Betty Sturdy. I'm a member of the Environmental Commission. I'm a representative and resident of Fairway Mews. I'm also a realtor. Let me ask you something. Who wants to live next to an athletic field? You want to buy your home next to an athletic field?
I'd love to.
Good for you. Is that the way you make your living?
No.
Ah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So all these comments, it's all very interesting. And I appreciate all of it. And it's a wonderful thing. I at night can hear Wall Raceway in my ear as I sleep. Are you with me? Okay.
When the wind is still, you can hear it.
Okay? You can hear a hoot owl at night. I love it here. It's a paradise. Let's not in haste tear it down. Trees coming down, everything coming down. All I hear are baseball fields, soccer fields, and personal interest. We are talking about taxpayers in this community that have a right and a reason to vote. Okay? I don't believe that the emphasis should be on recreation in terms of athletic fields. Let's utilize what we have, improve what we have. Why at this point are we spending millions of dollars, I'm hearing this, tearing down, putting up, when we haven't given the proper attention or post-Sandy to restore what we had? What are we waiting for?
We're waiting to spend millions? I don't think so. And Allaire Road. I walk my dogs 3 times a day. It's like the Long Island Expressway. I've got to keep my dogs away from the curb for fear they're going to jump the curb and hit me. Certainly, I wouldn't want children catching balls, running, trying to catch up to their friends on Allaire Road. It's the worst possible place in the community. The worst possible place, and I can attest to that. To have an expansion of athletic fields. What are we thinking? And as a resident of Fairway News, have you thought about the taxpayers there? Are they going to vote for you? I don't think so. I don't think so. In Fairway News, you can hear the drop of a hat. There's no place to go there. It's a golf course community. Yes, people like it, and they purchase their homes there. People like to play golf. We have a lot of golfers. Can you sit there? Can you walk your dog there? Can a kid